Famine is, by dictionary definition, an extreme and general scarcity of food as in a country or a large geographical area. But famine isn't just a shortage of food. Famine features a deepening recession in the entire rural economy, one affecting production and exchange, employment, and income of farm and non-farm households alike. Famine is also accompanied by social disintegration, so smuggling, black markets, and the like become more common. Distress sales of assets such as jewelry, animals, and land accelerates, and families are divided in search of work and relief. People abandon their homes and communities in desperation. Usually the ones that are the most vulnerable to famine are landless laborers, artisans, and traders, because during times of famine, demand for their labor, goods, and services decreases. Those who rely on the exchange of meat and marine products to obtain grains, such as pastoralists and fishermen, are also vulnerable because in times of famine, products that they sell, such as meat and other animal products, decrease in value while grain increases in value. Children and the elderly are the most vulnerable to the trauma of famine, such as malnutrition and disease. Famine doesn't suddenly fall upon a region. It usually takes 2 or more crop seasons to develop. Famine occurs not only because a chain of events disposes to a famine outcome, but also because nothing effective is done to break the process. The governments of famine-prone countries are usually unable to prevent or stop famine when it occurs. To better explain the reasons behind famine, I need to explain the vocabulary word food security. If a region has food security, it means food is available, people have access to that food, and people know how to leverage that food to meet their health needs. Factors that can contribute to famine include natural disasters such as drought, crop blight, cold spells, and flooding. But it's not just natural disasters that can cause famine, there are also economic and political reasons. Poverty is a big part of food stability because while there may be enough food in the world to feed everyone, the market often stops food from flowing to all who need it, and a vicious cycle occurs because people who don't get enough to eat are more likely to perform poorly or lack resources to better their situation, which locks them into poverty.
So I'm going to be covering hunger in the United States and Africa. Now, in the United States, 3 years after the onset of the financial and economic crisis, hunger remains high in the U.S. The financial and economic crisis that erupted in 2008 caused a dramatic increase in hunger in the United States. In 2010, 17.2 million households, or 14.5% of households, were food insecure, the highest number ever recorded in the U.S. Now, there are 2 main reasons for the hunger in the United States. The first one is trade, and the second one is immigration. Regarding trade, it is important to understand some basic economics. We in the U.S. live in a rich country that has a large amount of capital to produce things relative to the amount of labor. Poor countries have a lot of labor, but relatively little capital. There is a basic idea of economics, the factor price equalization theorem, which states that wages in rich countries will tend to go down and increase in poor countries through trade. This movement of production from richer to poorer countries is initiated by corporations, not individuals, but it does shift jobs and income to poor countries and people. Lower income people in the U.S. are particularly vulnerable to such shifts. So the second reason for hunger in the United States is immigration. A clear strategy for poor people is to go where there are higher paying jobs. Therefore, immigration has been a major response to poverty by people in poor countries. So the second region we're going to focus on is Africa. And more than half of Africa is now in need of urgent food assistance. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, is warning that 27 sub-Saharan countries now need help. But what appears as isolated disasters brought about by drought or conflict in countries like Somalia, Malawi, Niger, Kenya, and Zimbabwe are, in reality, a systematic problem. It is African agriculture itself that is in crisis, and according to the International Food Policy Research Institute, this has left 200 million people malnourished. Africa's years of wars, coups, and civil strife are responsible for more hunger than the natural problems that befall it. In essence, Africa's hunger is the product of a series of interrelated factors. Africa is a vast continent, and no one factor can be applied to any particular country, but three issues are critical. Issue number 1. Decades of underinvestment in rural areas which have little political clout. Africa's elites respond to political pressure, which is mainly exercised in towns and cities. This is compounded by corruption and mismanagement, what doctors call a lack of sound governance. Poor governance is a major issue in many African countries and one that has serious repercussions for long-term food security. Problems such as corruption, collusion, and nepotism can significantly inhibit the capacity of governments to promote development efforts, says a statement by the International Food Policy Research Institute. The second reason would be wars and political conflict leading to refugees and instability. It is estimated that there are 16 million refugees and displaced people in Africa. Farmers need stability and certainty before they can succeed in producing the food their families and societies need. The third reason would be the AIDS epidemic, which is depriving the continent of its most productive laborers. This is particularly a problem in South Africa, where over 30% of sexually active adults are HIV positive. According to aid agency Oxfam, when a family member becomes infected, food production can fall by up to 60%, as women are not only expected to be carers, but also provide much of the agricultural labor. Sub-Saharan Africa's population has grown faster than any region over the past 30 years, despite the millions of deaths from the AIDS pandemic, the UN Population Fund says. The UN and other organizations have been very active in trying to solve this growing issue.
The UN has played its role in treating famine. For example, the UN was involved in the famine that devastated Somalia in 2011. The famine was brought about by drought and was prolonged due to Islamist militias interfering with relief efforts.
The analysis that has been undertaken confirms that a state of famine exists in parts of Bokol and Lower Shabelle regions of southern Somalia. The rest of southern Somalia is close to famine.
On July 20, 2011, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon asked countries to donate $1.5 billion to aid the famine in Somalia. Their efforts, along with the return of rain and agricultural improvements, helped to bring about the end of the famine in February 2012. Aside from simply donating money, there are other methods which are being used to treat famine today. Food fortification. Organizations provide enriched foods to people in impoverished areas. An example would be a food called plumpy nut, which is sort of like peanut butter, but way cooler because it can easily treat child malnutrition. Enriched foods provide the nutrients that perishing people are not able to get with the diet they have currently. Prevention. Areas are monitored for early famine conditions and are aided before conditions worsen too greatly. Awareness. There are many activist groups today that spread the word to the masses of people to encourage them to help famine situations in any way possible.
Famine is not only a problem of not enough food, it is an economical problem as well. Famine also isn't a short affair, it lasts for multiple crop seasons. The UN has created programs to contribute to helping famined countries worldwide. You probably think that it's too far to even have to care, but take a look at where you live. What if it happened there?